We are living in a time where the people who have been noticing what's going on in our government, our businesses, our institutions, and I'm speaking specifically to those who have been here in corporate America and working in, maybe even a Silicon Valley tech company or maybe an academic institution, and you have felt the need to be silent in order to stay safe. I just want you to know that this is the time to speak up. I truly believe from my own lived experience of more than once being in a situation where I could see around the corner and my silence was putting others and myself in harm's way. And there have been times where I stayed silent as a false notion of self-protection. And there have been times where I spoke up and was ousted, was shown the door. My firm belief, because of my lived experience and having read books, people have written about their experiences, having studied history my whole entire life, both having growing up in Venezuela and learning US history, history from Europe, having watched Venezuela go through what it has gone through since I grew up there and some of the really good years before things turned into a different direction. And having worked in organizations and knowing that institutions will protect themselves at the expense of the individuals and our own well-being. I'm here to say to you, if you are sitting there counting the cost of whether or not to speak up, to say something, and there's something inside you, maybe all these voices that raised you or are around you in your workplace or your faith space or your academic institution or wherever you're finding yourself in at this particular moment. And if you are finding yourself saying, I don't know if I can pay the price of speaking up, and you're counting that cost, I'm here to say, in my lived experience and the stories I know of people that are in my life now and that have lived throughout history that I've read, there is a cost either way. And so I just want us to reckon with, if you're going to count the cost, that you count the cost of both speaking up, which will often lead to being ousted, shunned in certain cases, in particular culty type of environments, really losing your entire community. And that is a significant loss. I'm not minimizing that or downplaying it. I've walked through versions of that myself. But if we are pretending that speaking up and being ousted and shunned and all, losing the community and, even your job and livelihood, once again, difficult things that I myself have walked through, is the only cost, then we're kidding ourselves, because there is a huge cost, a huge price to pay for that silence. When it's buried, it doesn't just go away. When I worked in tsunami relief many years ago, and as a medical director for the nonprofit I was working in, translated for this, child specialist in trauma therapy for children, we often sat with a lot of Indonesian families where, children had lost their loved ones, their parents, their friends, and their whole community in some cases. And there would usually be a cup of tea or a cup of coffee offered to us and sitting there in these living rooms, what was left of some of the houses in the Banda Aceh area. And this teacup would often be used. I'm going to use my little glass here. And it would be filled to the top. And we usually didn't drink it until we were offered, up to 3 times to take a drink. And so it would sit there. But this trauma therapist would usually use that cup to remind us that when you bury your trauma, or when you bury your voice, or when you bury what's inside you that wants to be shared and speak out, it doesn't go nowhere. It actually kind of spills over, and it can harm others, come out sideways. But also my experience is that boiling, heated thing inside of us hurts us. Gabor Mate, who's a world-renowned expert in trauma, has pointed out, and some of the medical research shows this as well, that in women in particular, silencing ourselves causes all kinds of biological changes in such form as diseases, autoimmune diseases that can be very common when people don't speak out, especially they found this to be true in women. And maybe it's just that for a woman to speak out, for a woman to challenge, for a woman to question in certain institutions and certain environments, it's not received in the same way that when men challenge or push back or ask questions. But if you are seeing something that is a huge risk for the institution you're in, whether it's a business, an academic institution, and politics and your community, and you're not saying something in order to protect yourself and maybe even others, maybe your family, I'm here to tell you that there is a price that you pay, whether it's the inability to sleep at night, the way cortisol runs through your body and causes extra stress, the way people lose out just on your voice around you, but the changes that it does to you and your body when you live through that day after day after day of not speaking up. And so I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm just coming to you to say, if not now, then when? And if not you, then who? And if you don't speak up when you see it, when you see something, if you don't say something, what is the price that you're paying in your body, in your professional career, in your ability to look yourself in the mirror and know that you have had courage and done the right thing? Once again, I'm not downplaying this. There are real losses, and I've experienced those myself. I've been walked to the door, lost my job, lost the ability to feed my children because of asking a question where I saw around the corner. And it's not just me. I know that there are others of you who see, and you know that decision is being made in the favor of one particular person, but it's at the risk of an entire institution, or it's at the risk of half of the employees, or which, and I would argue, would be the entire institution if half of the employees are affected. And so I don't have all the answers for you. All I want to say is I want to come to you today and say, please count the cost on both sides of speaking or of not speaking. And listen to several of the episodes of my podcast. We've had Elaine Lynn Herring with her book, Unlearning Silence. We've had Amira Barger recently talking about the price of nice, and that there is a cost to just being nice and not saying the hard truth. Kindness means saying what is true. And don't you want to be the kind of friend, the kind of employee, the kind of leader who speaks up with truth? And there's so many ways to do that respectfully, but too many of those ways are automatically discounted as not respectful just because the statement has been made or the question has been asked, particularly if it comes from a woman, because of the double standards we have often around women in certain workplaces. And for us to move forward as a society in all of our institutions, politics, academia, business, our faith spaces, your voice matters. Your perspective matters. And I would love for you to join our community at A World of Difference podcast, where we bring on people from across industries who say things that I don't always agree with everything they say, but I love sitting at the table with them and hearing their perspective. And if we have lost that, who are we at the end of the day? Who are we as humans? Part of our humanity is we need each other to survive. We need each other's perspectives. And not all of us have the same strengths. Not all of us have the same skill set. Not all of us have had the same life experiences. We need to listen to one another. And if that is uncomfortable for you to hear perspectives that differ from yours because of the way our society has now pit us against each other and polarized us, to where even in workplaces, we're seeing especially senior skilled women be ousted in certain environments just for speaking up and saying their perspective, or giving a warning for the business, for the institution, then who are we? We get to create the future of work we want to see. We get to create the future of our countries, of our societies that we want to see. And speaking up really matters. And all I'm saying is we need your voice. And please count the cost of what it means to stay silent for yourself, for your own health and well-being, and for the well-being of the institution, whether or not they walk you to the door. Can you look yourself in the mirror and say, you did the right thing at the right time by issuing a warning of a decision that was being made that you saw around the corner was a risk? And if the institution does not welcome your perspective and your voice as a leader there, then it's okay to sort of shake the dust off your feet and move on. That space is not a space for you if you are not being heard and listened to. And that space is not only not a psychologically safe space for people to push back, no matter what their values are on the wall, no matter how much they say they are caring and full of integrity and believe in inclusion. And we want to hear your ideas and your perspectives, and we value our employees. Walls holding values are nothing if those values aren't embedded into the policies and procedures and behaviors of an organization. And so go where your voice is invited, and remember that just asking a question or just speaking up is not wrong. Good leaders welcome pushback and have done the work of self-awareness to know if that triggers them in some way. And if it does, that's the job of their leader, the responsibility of the leader to do that work, to figure out why they've been triggered and why they aren't a safe space for questions, for feedback, for pushback. And making a decision and expecting everybody to just fall in line and not question it when it's a risky decision for the business or the academic institution or the government or the faith space, that is risky. And we need to create our institutions in a way where we invite the voice of the employee, the voice of the leaders, and we're not so afraid of our decision being questioned. There's something really wrong there if you're a leader and your decisions cannot ever be questioned. It's fragile, it's ego-driven, and it's likely an insecurity and a fear of looking deep inside yourself. And if you are that person, I invite you to do that hard work. Go find a good therapist. Don't be afraid. Do not let your fear bring your whole institution down because you're afraid to hear a difference of opinion, which at the end of the day is all that it is. And if you are a person who's questioning whether you should speak out and counting that cost, I'm just going to challenge you to say, what kind of person do you want to be when you look in the mirror? And courage is required. Corporate courage is required right now. We had a couple on the podcast recently with their book release, Courage Over Fear. 2 people that met at Tesla and worked there for many years and left and wrote this book and are on their book tour right now. And go back and listen to that episode. And let me know what you think, because there is so much needed right now for people to speak up in workplaces and communities and faith spaces. And getting a chance to vote here in California for Prop 50 and do our part is a way of raising our voice. But there are many ways of doing that in your workplaces, in your families, in your faith spaces, in your communities every single day. So let me know if you're trying to count that cost, and send me a message, and I will just let you know that I'm cheering you on and saying your voice matters, because it does.